Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Itlali from the Mexica movement. And today I want to talk about how white supremacy demonizes our ancestors. The demonization of our ancestors is found in this colonial culture that we live in. It's found in the education system. It's found in the conversations that we have con el tío as we're eating tacos on the weekend. This psychological tactic of shaming us as an indigenous people for concepts that didn't even exist upon the time of European invasion is a way to psychologically keep our people from truly embracing their indigenous identity. And with that indigenous identity comes the embrace and the realization that we are still under occupation. So that is something that we have to understand. We have to understand that in reclaiming an identity that belongs to us, that is decolonizing, is also a way of creating the connection to this land. So the identities that our ancestors identified with for thousands and thousands of years through the different languages that they created on our Western Hemisphere have been assaulted by colonialism and have been hijacked by this idea of Americanism or this idea of the Latino or this idea of the Hispanic and all of these other concepts, right, that have been founded on a very white supremacist foundation of identity. And we have to understand that the demonization of our people is found, for example, you look at your history textbooks, and I found this in an AP textbook that was published, I believe, in the 2012 or 2013. And it's an example, right, of how this system of white supremacy seeks to demonize our people, right? And I remember trying to find out what it's said about our ancestors. And there's a chapter about early America, right? And it talks about how the indigenous people tried to use smallpox against the Europeans. Again, mind you, 95% of our population was wiped out through the use of a systematic understanding of smallpox and biological warfare. And anyway, so you have this history textbook, right? That does not mention the genocide, that does not mention the killing of our people, does not mention the raping of the women, does not mention the violation of all the treaties, does not mention the lies, does not mention the requerimiento, does not mention all this genocidal assaults on our people. But it does make a clear mention of a supposed attack or a planned attack of indigenous people to use biological warfare against the Europeans. So by setting the encounter, the invasion of our lands, as if we as indigenous people were just waiting to kill these Europeans with biological warfare because they're on our land. And so that's supposed to give our youth, mind you, this is a history textbook from high school. It's supposed to make a young Nicantlaca, a young indigenous person, have a notion or create a notion that, wow, my people were savage. Like, we were trying to do that to them. So it's a way that white supremacy takes an extra step, to beat you at trying to claim a biological warfare. It's like, before you even talk about how Europeans use biological warfare, let's talk about how indigenous people try to use it against Europeans. And that, again, is a way to victimize the invader, victimize the oppressor, and demonize the actual occupied people, the indigenous people, the people that were here for thousands and thousands of years. So you get this demonization in that, right? And then you get the demonization of the religious factor, the religious fanaticism, the Spanish Catholic or European, Christian Catholics, European idea that our people were savage and they were demons and they were practicing human sacrifice. And, good thing those mighty Spaniards came, because we would have just committed human sacrifice to extinction. These are the notions that we have, and these are the notions that get repeated over and over again. Mind you, Did Jesus Christ not sacrifice himself? Do Catholics not drink the blood of Jesus Christ in the symbolic hostia and wine that the Catholic, priest takes? Does not the Catholic Church eat Jesus Christ's body in a confession or the hostia? I mean, hello, we're talking about a religion that symbolically practices cannibalism. But that's not demonic and that's not savage. That's Christian because white people are doing it, right? So then you get these portrayals of our people committing human sacrifice. And yes, we did commit human sacrifice, just like most humans of the world are doing, have done, will continue doing. That's another video that we'll talk about. But the fact that they focus and they create this fabricated cultural notion of cannibalism is a way to say those indios were disgusting, esos indígenas estaban matándose y comiéndose. So again, we carry these notions with us in our ignorance, in our colonialism, and we believe them and we continue to perpetrate them as we teach our young. And again, you get the demonization of our people through the media, right? And through cartoons like Pocahontas, like El Dorado, all of these things about indigenous culture, indigenous people being somewhat mysterious and evil and inherently spiritual beings that talk like Pocahontas talking to the raccoons and the trees and just infatuated with this white man. Again, demonizing her indigenous culture and glamorizing and portraying the European man as this heroic being. So the demonization of our culture is done so, again, to place the European at this victim, heroic, yet superior being that is just the absolute, representation of humanity. And it does that in order so that we as indigenous people, in our ignorance, in our colonial mental state, we believe this and we continue to perpetrate this. And we have to understand that. And we also in academia are seeing that, right? And we've been seeing that as far as demonizing indigenous people, right? Practicing human sacrifice, or, they were just so evil that like we're talking about now, the Mexica civilization, right? How many times do we hear this? Oh, well, they, and I get this a lot on YouTube, right? Check this out. But your ancestors were killing each other and committing human sacrifice. Okay. So by saying that argument, you're saying that, families that have fights amongst each other, like, you slap your brother or your sister or whatever, right? That's what happens among people and among nations. That's why you have laws. That's why you have prisons. That's why you have a lot of ways to try to correct criminal behavior. That's part of, what happens in societies all over the world. But to say that because we did that, we deserved what came, it's a very telling reflection of how we view the genocide, that we don't even know, or that language and that word doesn't even exist in our vocabulary because we have been so disconnected with the indigenous experience. So I wanted to talk about that, about demonizing our people, because we have to understand that when we're talking about what's happened to us as a people, there's another flip to that. There's the side of what Europeans have done to themselves, and the way that they have brought themselves up to this superior social being is by completely smashing, destroying indigenous cultures and identities on the very own land that they continue to occupy. So let us remember that we in the Mexica movement are very aggressive about identity, because we understand that identity represents land, it represents power. Think about it. We are indigenous people born and raised on our own continent, and we are labeled identities that represent a people from another continent, from another country, right? So that's supposed to disconnect us. Our bodies are supposed to be disconnected from this land. And we understand that in the Mexica movement. That's why we say we are indigenous people. The term that we are using as an alternative is Nicantlaca. It comes from the Nahuatl language. And this term was used upon time of the European invasion. And it's an alternative that we offer, that we suggest to say we indigenous people. I don't know about you, but I'd rather use an indigenous language concept that says I belong to this land, rather than saying American, rather than saying brown, rather than saying Native American, rather than saying red, rather than saying Indian. I rather honor the words that my ancestors used to define who they were on their land, instead of submitting to the European identities. No, thank you. We in the Mexica movement, in the 30 and plus years that we've been in existence, have continued to denounce these ethnic genocidal claim of identities. We are not white. We are not European. We are indigenous people. Mixed blood, full blood, indigenous people on their own land, under occupation for more than 500 years. Stop demonizing your ancestors. Do not let this white supremacist media, cartoons infect you with that. Realize what's going on. Demonization of indigenous people, the victimization of Europeans to place them in this social hierarchy, racial hierarchy of white supremacy. Say no to that shit. Destroy that white supremacist notion in your mind. Citlali from the Mexica movement. Thank you very much for watching this video. More coming up. Have a beautiful, amazing, decolonized, strong day.